That gets the attention quickly, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much, everyone, and welcome to the Finance Auditing Committee of March 21st, 2024. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with our roll call, please.
Thank you. Good morning again, everyone. We're going to start with Director Dorsey, who's absent. Giudice.
Here.
Roscoe.
Here.
Hernandez. Here. Maston.
Here.
Rodoni.
Here.
Vice Chair Parr. Present. Chair Rabbit.
Here.
And President Cochran.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum. You are also a committee of the whole. In the room, you also have Directors Garbarino, Hill, Terrio, and Thier.
Great. Thank you all very much. And we'll move on then to item number 3, which is ratification of previous actions by the Auditor Controller. And we have Monique Spike here. She's going to go over what is in your packet as pages 5 to 28, the PFM report, which starts on page 9. Monique, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'll start with briefly some comments about the economy. The Fed had its widely anticipated March meeting earlier this week on Wednesday, and I just want to make some brief comments about sort of the tone of that meeting as it relates to the interest rate environment. One, there had been some concern going into that meeting that with some of the hotter than anticipated inflation news, that the Fed would perhaps change course on its decisions. That did not happen. The Fed essentially reiterated that they believe that the higher inflation numbers recently were bumps in the road, essentially, and that they do expect to lower rates later this year. What's really notable is that, each quarter they put out projections for the economy, and their projections supported that they still believe we'll have 3 rate cuts in 2024. The markets at large, the equity markets, took that really well. So we saw some good movement in the stock markets earlier this week. Other things that the Fed focused on were higher expected growth numbers for 2024. Also expected lower unemployment rates than they had previously been predicting. So all that points to the Fed continuing to believe that the economy will weather the storm well. So that's all fairly positive for where we are. Now, what happened in terms of the interest rate markets is that yields actually increased. And I thought it would be interesting, and we, in consultation with district staff, thought it would be interesting just to put the yield cycles in perspective to how it really impacts the district's portfolio. So on pages 16 and 17 of your packet, we prepared some analysis. And I'm going to spend the majority of my time walking through this a little bit. On 16 of your packet, we provide on the top of the page the 2-year U.S. Treasury, which is a great proxy for essentially the average maturity that we're looking at in the district's longer-term portfolio. And through June of 2021 to the end of the last quarter, you can see how much interest rates on average have risen. Fiscal year 21-22, we saw yields increase 2.71%. In fiscal year 22-23, we saw 1.94% increase in rates. And then fiscal year to date, as of December 31st, a net decline versus the prior year. Now, what's notable about this is the table on the bottom of this page, because this reflects the changes in the district's portfolio. First of all, I want you to focus on net interest. This is the interest that the district is earning from its investments. Now, one thing you'll note is that the interest earnings are always positive. We are not purchasing negative investments for the district's portfolio. And as interest rates have risen over the next fiscal year, you'll see that the total net earnings year over year have generally increased from $3.2 million in the entire fiscal year 21-22 to $6.6 million in fiscal year 22-23. And you can see that we're essentially almost going to double that in the current fiscal year. So that's reflective of us essentially buying securities at higher interest rates as rates have risen. Now, the other side of that coin is the changes in market value. And that is the next slide. Now, essentially, when interest rates rise, market values decline. When interest rates fall, market values increase. The market value is the part of the portfolio that we cannot control. That's essentially just what's going on in the market, what the Fed is doing. And so you saw a couple fiscal years ago tremendous negative market value changes. And this is as interest rates were increasing dramatically over that summer, that 21-22 period. Fiscal year 22-23, interest rates rose, albeit a little less drastically, so you'll still see that negative market value change. But then we get into the period in the current fiscal year where you're starting to see tremendous gains in the portfolio value. So that positive $8 million is not necessarily real money we have to spend. It's just reflective of the fact that interest rates have declined versus the prior fiscal year. Now, in terms of discipline, it's easy to try to shift the strategy when interest rates are rising or falling in an effort to, game the market. Our strategy has always been to focus on the long-term discipline, taking advantage of interest rates where we could, but really focusing on managing your investments to your cash flow needs. And on page 17, I wanted to show the benefits of that discipline. So we have a very similar style chart on this page. It's a bit more colorful and a lot more going on here, so I'll walk you through what you're looking at. Essentially, we have 3 rate periods on the chart. In the golden yellow, the darker yellow, we have what we call rising rates. In the lightest yellow, those are periods of falling rates. And then in the sort of mid-range color, we have stable rate periods. And what's this meant to show is that, cycles shift, they come and go over the long run. So this is over the past 20 years. And we've had 2 stable periods of falling rates, 3 stable rate periods, and 3 periods of rising rates. On the lines, you'll see the light blue line is the S&P LGIP government index, and that is simply reflective of pooled or overnight investments. Then you have the 1 to 5 year Treasury, which is a great index that reflects sort of longer term investments like the type we're purchasing for the district. And the red line is simply the Fed, and that is what the overnight Fed funds rate is. Now, what you'll observe is that through all of these cycles, in periods of falling interest rates, when rates are falling, the 1 to 5 year Treasury index is going to be the best performer. 1 tends to be longer. 2, as interest rates fall, market values are rising, so your total return is generally higher. In periods of stable interest rates, when interest rates are steady, you're going to benefit from the longer duration strategies, longer maturities, just because you're getting higher income for going out longer on the curve. The only time these short-term strategies tend to perform best is when interest rates are rising. But on average, because interest rates aren't rising all of the time, or even for extended periods of time, the longer-term strategies are going to win the day. And so this disciplined approach that we've taken for the district's portfolio really reflects that reality. Over the past few years, as rates have risen, we've been able to capture those higher rates, but we've also been able to manage the downside of being exceptionally short. And so the district has really come away smelling like a rose, quite frankly, in this very difficult economy. So we're really proud of that. I hope that you can see the benefits of that. And right now, what we're expected to be in is a falling interest rate environment for this year. So we have been, again, continuing the discipline, working with your staff, making sure that we're cash flow matched, taking advantage of opportunities where they can, and we'll expect to continue to do that. And then after the end of this year, we will hopefully all be in a bit of a more stable environment for interest rates and hopefully the economy. So that is the data and the information I wanted to share this morning. I'm happy to take questions from the committee.
Great, thank you very much. That is really good stuff. I'll look to my colleagues to see if there's any questions of Monique on the report in front of us. I am not seeing any hands, but again, thank you for providing that that insight and that concentrating on those couple pages. We do appreciate it and appreciate the work going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will ask if there's anyone from the public who would like to speak on this particular item.
We have no speakers on this item in the room or online.
Okay, and what the action in front of us is to ratify the previous actions of the auditor controller. And I'll look to my colleagues. If there's no questions, can I get a motion to approve? And a second by? You have that. And we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously with all present. Thank you. We'll move on then to the 4A, which is our budget increase in the fiscal year 23-24 bus division capital project for the project number 1431, which is the resurface of the employee parking lot and solar panels, of which we just heard. And we have Mr. Everly to give us perhaps a very brief presentation.
Okay, so we have the budget be revised to $12,155,618 due to the bids coming in higher than anticipated, and then we'll fully fund the project.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. I'll look to my colleagues. Are there any questions on the financing of this particular item?
Move to approve.
So we have a motion. A second. I'll ask real quickly if there's anyone from the public who'd like to speak to us on this item.
We have no speakers on this item.
And we'll take a voice vote again. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously with all present. Thank you, John. Moving on, 4B, approve actions in the fiscal year 23-24 ferry division capital budget relative to the security. This is the security piece, right? That we just approved. And this is on.
No, this is separate item.
Oh, this is separate. I'm sorry. I'll read the item. The capital budget relative to the SFFT inner berth hydraulics and SFFT outer berth rehabilitation projects. Mr. Everly.
Thank you. So we're recommending that we take the two individual projects that we have in the current fiscal ferry division capital project fiscal year, 2443 SF Ferry Terminal Inner Berth Hydraulics, and then the project 2444 SFFT Outer Berth Rehabilitation. Combine those into one construction project, calling it capital project 2443 with the title SFFT West and East Berth Rehabilitation, combining the two budgets for a total project budget of $6,268,000. We established two different construction projects last year when we were going through design, where we thought that we were going to complete the designs at a different time period, but we're almost done with both designs. So in the interest of efficiencies at the site, we want to combine it into one total project. Happy to answer any questions.
Again, looking to my Director Cheria.
I'm interested in the failure of these hydraulic systems at a couple of different locations and wondering if it's normal wear or whether there is something in the manufacture that is suspect and that maybe has been changed for any future installation.
They're Rube Goldberg contraptions. It's 50 years old. You need to watch them to, look in awe and amazement and feel for the mechanics who maintain them.
It's a very complicated system. The cylinders
You can make the motion.
are supposed to be self-leveling. The manifolds are shot and we can't get parts anymore. So we're going to strip out everything and put in a simpler system.
Okay. Any other questions for John on this one? Seeing none, I'll ask real quickly, is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak to us on this particular item?
We have no speakers on the line and in the room.
And I'll look to my colleagues. Any further discussion and or a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, again on a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously with all present. Moving on then to 5A, which is approve actions relative to the low carbon transit operations program, or the LC TOP. And we have Amy Fry to make a brief presentation.
Yes. Good morning, Chair Robin and directors. Here to present to you the item on LC TOP, which is the Low Carbon Transit Operations Program, a state program that we apply to every year, which provides us funding to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve mobility. So there are 3 actions before you today: to approve the submission of a grant application for the MV Del Norte replacement project for a total of approximately $2.8 million, to certify that the district will comply with all regulations for the programs, all requirements for the program's rules and regulations, and that you would authorize the general manager or his designee to apply for and receive LC TOP funding on the district's behalf. The district will replace the MV Del Norte with a new Tier 4 powered vessel, and that is to comply with the California Air Resource Board's commercial harbor craft regulation, which was amended in 2022. The new vessel will be powered with cleaner engines and thus reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And this is the first of 4 catamaran vessels that the district plans to replace. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you very much. I'll look to my colleagues. Any questions on this particular item? Seeing no hands raised, I will ask if there's any public comment.
We have no public comment on this item for folks on the line or in the room.
Great, bringing it back to the board.
Question, is this relating to electric or?
I don't know. No, neither. It's not hydrogen or electric. The CARB rules, we have certain deadlines. We will have to park our existing catamarans if we don't replace them. At this juncture, the technology for both hydrogen fuel cell and electric does not meet the operational profile of our Larkspur service. So we're going to replace the vessels with both vessels that meet the CARB requirements, which is to go from a Tier 2 engine to a Tier 4 engine. It'll reduce particulate matter, NOx emissions. Also, they're more fuel efficient, and the whole design was similar to the WITA Dorado class vessel. It's 40% more fuel efficient. Greenhouse gas emissions are a function of how much fuel you consume. And then I know some people dispute CARB's determination on the renewable diesel that we use in these vessels, but according to CARB, it provides a significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. So this will not be an electric vessel, nor will it be a hydrogen fuel cell vessel. These are transition vessels till we can get to that next phase.
Appreciate that. Anyone else have any questions before we move on? So we have done public comment. Yeah, I'll look to my colleagues for a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, again, on a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously with all present. Thank you, Amy. Moving on then to item number 6, which is to approve a 5-year program to increase tolls on the Golden Gate Bridge and adopt findings to support the filing of a notice of exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act. And we have Jennifer Minucci to make this presentation. Jennifer?
Thank you, Chair Rabbit. Good morning, directors. Thank you, Ava, for taking the chair. I'm here, this item before you, ask the Finance Auditing Committee to select and recommend a 5-year toll program to the Board of Directors. The item also asks you to adopt the findings that support the filing of a CEQA exemption for any toll increase that will go into effect. After receiving public feedback and comments from this board, staff recommends that the board adopt toll option 1, a 50-cent annual toll increase, which will fund a little over half of the district's projected shortfall for ongoing operational and capital needs over the next 5 years. The district is facing a $220 million 5-year projected shortfall based on current transit service levels and the ongoing cost to maintain and protect the Golden Gate Bridge. It will take additional revenue just to maintain current operations and fund the district capital projects. Absent additional revenues, the district will have to greatly curtail existing bus and ferry service. Tolls are the district's largest source of revenue, and the district does not receive any dedicated state or local tax revenues. Today, bridge traffic remains 80 to 85% of pre-pandemic levels, while bus and ferry transit ridership are about 50% of pre-pandemic levels. In 2023, revenues from tolls and transit fares were down about $900,000 each week as compared to pre-pandemic revenues. To reduce expenses and in response to reduced customer demand for travel in the Highway 101 corridor, the district is offering significantly less transit service today than it was pre-pandemic, and the service that's out there focuses on maintaining regional bus service for mobility and equity and ferry service for recreation and tourism. Meanwhile, the cost to operate the district services increase every year. These costs include paint and steel for the bridge, fuel for buses and ferries, and staff who operate the district's services. Rising costs will require either regular increases in revenues or regular annual reductions in bus and ferry service. Staff's recommendation balances the fiscal challenges facing the district as well as the competing demands from our customers to avoid or minimize raising the cost of travel in the Highway 101 corridor while continuing to provide bus and ferry service to meet demand and take cars off the road. Staff's recommendation is the culmination of a process that began on December 14th, 2023, when the Finance Auditing Committee discussed and reviewed the potential need for a future toll increase, types of toll rates, and proposed steps for public outreach to solicit input and guidance on possible toll increase options. On January 26, 2024, the board approved a formal process to engage the public with an extensive public outreach program consisting of informational meetings on the proposed toll options, ending with the close of the public comment period February 23, 2024. Staff's recommended option 1 will generate approximately $139 million in additional revenues over 5 years. Approval of this option would reduce the projected $220 million shortfall by a little more than half, allowing continued funding of the bridge's operations and maintenance at current levels, and will provide partial funding for the bus and ferry services. The remaining shortfall must be met with either new revenues and/or reduction in expenses. As part of the district's toll study process, staff undertook a comprehensive public outreach program to inform the public about the district's financial needs, to discuss the toll options under consideration, and to seek public input on these options. Announcements, notices, and advertisements soliciting public input were published in local English and Spanish language newspapers, on the district's website and newsletters, and on social media as outlined on page 4 of the staff report. The district also conducted 2 virtual open houses and in-person public hearing to present information and receive feedback. Members of the public wishing to comment on the proposals could do so by attending an open house or a public hearing through an online feedback form, by email, and by sending letters to the district secretary. Per the district's language implementation policy, presentation materials were available in English, Spanish, Chinese, and Vietnamese on the district's website, and Spanish language interpreters attended each open house. Public comment period opened January 26, 2024, and concluded February 23, 2024. As of the close of the public comment period on February 23rd, the district has received 165 comments on the toll program proposal. Of the 165 comments received, 68 comments, or 41%, opposed a toll increase on the Golden Gate Bridge. 12, or 7%, supported a toll increase, and 85 comments did not express a position on a toll increase. A little over half of the commenters opposed a toll increase, 36 of the 68, cited as the reason for their opposition. 92 of the commenters who submitted comments through the online form ranked their preference among the 4 options presented. Option 4, the lowest proposed increase, received the highest ranking with 66 comments, and option 1, staff's recommendation, received the second highest ranking with 20 comments. Many comments and questions submitted did not directly address the toll proposal. These comments included suggestions for alternate or expanded toll programs and suggestions for how the district could reduce expenses or generate additional revenue. Some comments and questions neither expressed a position on the proposal nor propose alternative suggestions. These comments are included in the overall comment count, but may not be reflected in the detailed comment survey. An overview of the comments not directly related to the toll program proposal begins on page 4 of your packet, and responses to comments are included in attachment B in your packet. In conclusion, again, staff is recommending the board adopt toll option 1, a 50-cent annual increase, which will fund a little over half of the district's projected $220 million shortfall over the 5 years. Option 1 strikes the balance between our customers' preference preferences to minimize the cost of travel in the corridor, and the district's mission to maintain and protect the Golden Gate Bridge and provide bus and ferry transit service in the 101 corridor. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to ask any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Appreciate that. I'll look to my colleagues for questions to staff. Director Maston.
Yeah. So I'd like to point out the cost to eliminate the entire shortfall is, I believe, approximately 9.5% increase, or 80 to 85% increase. And on an historical note, when the bridge opened in 1937, the toll was 50 cents in each direction, and adjusted for inflation, that's about $11 now in each direction. I certainly recognize our need for a toll increase. However, as I've said in the past, I think the proposed 6% increase is unreasonable, and the more modest 4.5% of option 2, or 40 cents, is defensible and in line with the pain being felt by everyone in our current economy. I'm of two contradictory minds with this proposal. One, that we're going too far, and two, that we're not going far enough. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Okay.
Do I get 2 votes?
Cover all the bases.
I think that says it all. Are we going far enough, or are we going too far? That's a balance. Right. I'm old enough to remember when we lived in North Beach. We'd visit folks up in Marin, and we'd throw the quarter at the thing. Yeah, the basket was great. I just wanted to comment, if I may, on the quality of the report that you gave, Jennifer and Paolo, what you put together as well. I did make that comment last time. Phenomenal. I even dug it out of, and there wasn't any coffee or anything on it, out of the recycling. And you used it a great deal. People are commenting, which is so healthy, and all of what you put together pulled out their comments, so we know how to deal with them. Even being driven, and I memorized them. I don't remember anything, but that I do. The person who gave me a ride to the airport at 3 a.m, commented on the $11, and I was able to hit those buttons. So thank you so much. Okay.
Director Thayer.
Thank you, Chair Babbitt. I had a few questions. The recommendation for the percentage rate increase is based on a lot of factors. Now, no one likes a rate increase. I wish I could personally vote against it, but I understand that we need to operate the bridge and the ferry and the bus service. So rate increases do happen. Right now in the report, it says that bridge traffic remains at 80 to 85% of pre-pandemic levels, while transit ridership, bus and ferry is about 50% of pre-pandemic levels. Now, to the extent that our estimations of revenue and what we need to cover the shortfall is based on that, do we anticipate that any of these numbers are going to go up in the next 5 years?
Yes. We're seeing slow, steady growth. We do not anticipate that it will return to pre-pandemic levels. A lot of our travel is tied to the commute. Bridge traffic during the morning commute is down 25 to 30% from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. And so downtown San Francisco right now is a 35% vacancy rate, and it has over 20 Salesforce towers of unleased office space. Over the coming years, there'll be some, rising up from the ashes in downtown San Francisco, like it always does, the Phoenix, and there'll be a repurposing of space. And so currently we're seeing slow, steady growth as we compare a month to the same month a year ago. So we are seeing slow growth, but we don't anticipate rapid growth. We do not anticipate returning to pre-pandemic levels. Now, no one has a perfect crystal ball. Like everyone else, I'm sure our crystal ball is wrong. But that's basically the assumptions we have, is very slow, modest growth, just what we're currently seeing. And we feel that's prudent and reasonable.
And do we think any of the shortfall from going with a 50-cent increase versus something higher will be made up? So will that $139 million go up? Are we projecting that will go up by July 2028?
So we did a 5-year projection, and the 5-year projection based on basically today's service levels with very modest growth indicates a $220 million shortfall over 5 years. So if the board were to select the staff recommended option 1 of a 50-cent increase per each year, that funds a little more than half of that, but the other half has to be made up someplace else. And so we have our work cut out for us to reduce costs and to look at other revenue sources. And that's similar to what this board has done in the previous toll increases they did 5 years ago and then 10 years ago. Is a toll increase does about half of it, and the other half we try to find someplace else. But it is important to note that our biggest expense is people. And if we wish to provide service to our customers, and we need people, and if we want to recognize that costs go up a little bit every year, we need to raise our fees a little bit every year. And if we're not willing to do that, that's a policy decision. That's your decision. It's your purview. But then we will be making a decision to cut every year. And the board's mission is to protect the bridge. And so the cuts would be at bus and ferry. And so we want to make sure that you make an informed decision. It's a difficult decision. No one envies a body that has to raise fees. But what's before you is an increase every year of 50 cents to some lesser amount that would fund a portion of our shortfall. And it would still have tremendous challenges for you and the organization if you were to approve the staff recommendation.
Great, thank you. I have Director Grossball, then Cheerio, and then Director Hill.
This is either my third or fourth one of these 5-year plans, and I've never had so many comments from friends at all levels of income objecting to this increase. It may just be the stunning fact of hearing possibly over $11, and even with a pass-through in 2028. And I did attend the virtual open houses, and I know some people ask us about cutting costs. Are there any of the capital projects that we have on the proposal in the next 5 years that might be postponed a couple of years that might save us some larger amounts of money? And just addressing what I heard your responses, but it'd be good to hear them again about the cost cutting or Dennis's responses or Joe's. So
The board will consider tomorrow a strategic plan. The strategic plan has approximately 40 initiatives, and one of the initiatives is to look at the capital plan to see if we can stretch it out. And that's one vehicle we could use for the other half of the $220 million, because the toll doesn't solve it. And so the strategic plan that comes before you tomorrow for discussion, not for action tomorrow, outlines a variety of strategies, some of which help financially, some of which do not. But one of the initiatives does call for looking at the capital plan to see if we can stretch things out, which would provide some additional revenues opportunities during this 5-year period.
Director Cheerio.
I note first of all that the difference between the option 4, which is the least impact on toll payers, and option 1, which is the greatest impact on toll payers, is 15 cents a year, which is not all that substantial in terms of impact on anybody's pocketbook, and that some increase is inevitable. I was actually happy to see that of the options available to us, staff recommended option 1. I acknowledge I am not a toll payer, and that any increase puts considerable pressure, especially on the directors from north of the gate. Although apparently Director Grossball is hearing it south of the gate as well. I am, however, a transit user, and would deeply regret to see any cuts to transit as a result of failure to adequately exploit the tolling potential of the bridge to sustain it. If I'd had my druthers, I'd have seen an even more aggressive set of proposals than what we've seen here. So I'm fully supportive of option 1.
Hey, Director Hill.
I was very close to Director Terrio. I was going. But the question is, we're talking about capital expenses, but operational expenses as we electrify. Are they likely to be more costly or less costly? Do you have any feeling about that?
Looking at other agencies that are ahead of us, it would be more costly for the fueling of our transit vehicles.
So that would argue.
That's not factored into this. What's factored into this is our existing operations with some modest growth in bus and ferry service. And what's factored in is our current capital plan. But we have not factored in increased fueling costs that would be associated with
But
electrification.
if we did, that would be a justification for the higher rate.
Certainly that'll present some challenges that we'll have to solve on the other side. If you were to, whatever you approve, we'll have to make up the difference. But the projection of $220 million shortfall does not include that extra expense.
My understanding also, so thank you very much.
Thanks.
Director Giudice?
Thank you, Chair. I think Dennis's approach and the staff's approach to the recovery has been unique from what I've observed in a lot of transportation agencies around. I think it's been thoughtful, compassionate, and I think it's been very responsible. And I think option number one gives us the best opportunity to fully recover over the next 5 years.
Director Parr?
Thank you. For some reason, I managed to get my name in the Chronicle after we talked about this.
Are you wearing it today?
My comment, and I'll make it again, was it only gets us halfway to what our shortfall is. And that means that this group right here has the hard work to do in the next 5 years. We're the ones that have to say no to things. We're the ones that have to look at changes in our delivery system. It's a new era. I'm anxious to see the strategic plan tomorrow, and I know that it's not going to be a one and done. It's going to be kind of chipping away at it like the 50 cents. So I just wanted to go on record, now that I've been in the news, that I support the 50 cents. Thank you.
Director Chair, did you have a comment?
I did.
I was just wondering if there's any, in order to make up some of the shortfall, if we do go with option one, is there any grant funding, any more free money we could apply for?
Certainly, the strategic plan talks about, upping our efforts on grants. We have a pretty good track record. The district was fortunate to receive $282.5 million of federal COVID relief money since the start of the pandemic. You may recall just over a year ago, we had an event here at the bridge where we were the recipients of a $400 million discretionary grant, one of only 4 in the country, where Speaker Murdo Pelosi, where Secretary Buttigieg and White House Infrastructure Czar Mr. Andrew all came to celebrate our receipt of that $400 million. So we have a track record of getting as much money as possible, and we will continue that, and we will up those efforts, and that'll be one of the items discussed in the strategic plan also.
Thank you.
Director Rudoni?
Thank you, Chair Rabbit. I'm going to support staff's recommendation. I think it's prudent to take this step. But most importantly, being from the North Bay, I know many of our commuters are going to have to bear the burden of this. But even more important to me is we need to support and maintain our bus and ferry service. And if we don't take this step, those are going to be in risk, and we really need to build those back up. So that's why I'm supporting this today.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Director Hernandez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to extend my thanks to the team after having put together this very comprehensive report, and for everyone who had a hand in the months-long effort to make sure that the public had an opportunity to weigh in on the options and to appropriately evaluate, so that we could appropriately evaluate the tone of what's happening out there. I will be supporting the item today. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Director Garbarino?
Thank you. Recognizing I'm not on this committee, but I just want to sort of pile on what my colleagues have said. I think all of us get the comments from the public. That's our job, to represent them. The sustaining of the bus service has been paramount, number one, in terms of probably 75% of the comments that I have received. So I would be bold enough to join you in voting for this. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else have any final comments, questions, concerns? Just for myself, I thank you to my colleagues, but most of all, thank you to staff for doing incredible outreach, being very thorough in that outreach and communication. I think, it's never an easy thing to increase costs especially when there's inflation overall and people are feeling that. But I think at the same time, while politically the easy thing to do is to find a lower amount, the responsible thing to do and the proper thing to do, in my opinion, showing leadership, is to move forward with the recommendation, acknowledging what Director Parr said, that it doesn't even get us to where we need to be. And I pride myself on someone who follows the numbers and gets involved in budgets. And I do think, and as a member of the North Bay and one that will pay this increased toll and have family members complain to me about that, only half jokingly, because at the end of the day, what's most important to the North Bay is that the bridge exists, that it's there, and that it's there for future generations. And I know that a portion of these tolls are also going to go to the capital improvement projects that we have done thus far and that we will continue to do, including the next large project, that whole seismic upgrade of the main span, so that that bridge will be there after the next inevitable earthquake. And I do think that obviously, I like the way that I'm always proud of the way that the bridge handles its dollars and tolls. I think it's always been very responsible. I like the fact that the bridge is the number one priority of the district. And then at Bus and Ferry, although we all know very important, is that second piece to the picture. But that Bus and Ferry also allow the bridge to flow freely and for people to cross it. And it also provides the important alternative mode of transportation for so many people in the North Bay as well. So I do thank you. And I recognize, Director Theriault, that the difference between the options is not a lot. And I think it's on purpose, because the need for the bridge is to obtain that particular amount. And to Director Maston, I think I attended 2 editorial boards where I quoted the wrong increase, even though it was close to yours, because I was only counting the one-way collection at that particular point in time. But the bridge has always been relatively expensive to cross. It's right on line with what was envisioned and what needed to be applied at the time it was built, because it is such a significant structure in a precarious location that needs all that good care that our employees give it. So I am definitely in favor of this moving forward. I know that we have people online that would like to speak to us, and or perhaps even people here in this room. So we will move to public comment before we take any kind of action.
All right, we have no speakers in the room, but I'm going to turn this over to Justine, because Justine, we do have a speaker on the public line. Is that correct?
Yes, we do. Our speaker is David Pilpel. David, go ahead.
Great. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Okay, so a couple of thoughts. The staff report on page 448 of the packet states that no written comments were received. I did take the time to submit a brief comment letter. I would appreciate it if staff would forward my letter to the board and include it in communications. As I stated in the letter, one of my primary concerns is reinforcing the need for ferry transit fares to cover 50% of their operating costs and bus transit fares to cover 25% of their operating costs, for a blended about 33% of transit operating costs per long-time district policy. And I inquired about how much that would raise in additional revenues if that were to occur over the 5-year period. My other concern is that pay-as-you-go and invoice customers, in my opinion, should cover the incremental costs of those toll collection methods. And I stated that I don't think it is fair for fast track customers to subsidize those customers. I know that most transactions are through fast track, but I suspect the 25-cent and $1 surcharges are insufficient to cover the incremental costs for those pay-as-you-go and invoice customers. There were other comments and questions that I included. Staff can address those offline. That's fine. I do support the proposed toll increase, as I think you've all made clear, and we all know that is a primary revenue source for the district. And I do recognize that this is one of the hardest decisions that the board makes, and I know that you do not take this matter lightly. those are my thoughts, and I'd appreciate some response. Thanks.
Thank you, David, for your thoughtful comments. Director Mulligan?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pilpel. The 0 is a typo. Yes, we
And
did.
it's actually, his comments included in the email sent to the public hearing because it came before 4:30. I forwarded it to the public hearing at goldengate.org. That's
Right.
why.
So it
that's where
wasn't,
it
it
is.
was included in our comments. With respect to your points on the fare box recovery, we share your goals. We were achieving those goals before the pandemic, Mr. Pilpel. We had a 50% fare box recovery approximately on ferry and approximately 25% on bus. Since the pandemic, we offer less service, but our fixed costs are the same. So we currently are not meeting those. Though we are getting better each month compared to the same month a year ago. And so we have that as our goal, and we will work towards that. And that'll be something that'll be one of our challenges over the next couple of years. But the fixed costs do present some challenges. Bus is more scalable on the fixed cost side than the ferry. But as we see customers return, our fixed costs get spread out over more fares, and the fare box recovery is slowly increasing, probably not as fast as you would desire to see, though. But we appreciate your comments. They were included in our information, and I apologize if we indicated otherwise.
Thank you. Any other public comment before we move on?
Justine, do you have any other speakers on the line?
We have no other speakers. Thank you.
Great. I'll bring it back to this board. Ask for any last minute questions, comments, or concerns, or if someone's willing to make a motion. Director.
It appears I may be one of the few who doesn't support this. As you know, what many of you know, I've been a big supporter of the ferries and buses, so it's a very tough issue. But symbolically, putting the fast track over $11 already, I know we're going to get up there over the next 20 years, and getting so much higher than the Bay Bridge and the state bridges. I'm just not quite ready to do it. It's partly symbolic, but I just think it's too high.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
I made a motion, though.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and the second. On this one, we're going to take a roll call.
That's right. Thank you. We have a first from Director Giudice and a second from Director Terrio. So we're going to start with Director Conroy, who's absent. Dorsey is absent, and Guardio is absent. Garbarino.
Aye.
Giudice.
Yes.
Grosboll.
No.
Hernandez.
Aye.
Maston.
No.
Moulton Peters is absent. Parr.
Aye.
Rodoni.
Aye.
Terrio.
Yes.
Tier. Yes. Second Vice President Rabbit.
Aye.
First Vice President Hill.
Yes.
And President Cochran.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 10 ayes.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for their thoughtful comments. I will say, as someone who's on the Bay Area Toll Authority and dealing with the state bridges, I think they actually look to the Golden Gate Bridge as the example. The state has other sources of dollars that go into those beyond the tolls of those bridges. So one way or another, you're paying a higher toll on those bridges as well. You're just paying it in a different manner. And I think the reality is that we're a little more straightforward here in the district because we're a self-contained entity financially.
If I may add, other transit agencies in the Bay Area receive sales tax measure money. San Francisco has a sales tax measure for transportation that helps provide lots of money for day-to-day operating costs of Muni. Marin has a sales tax measure for transportation that subsidizes Marin Transit's operations. Sonoma County has a sales tax for transportation that funds the 3 local operators up there. AC Transit has sales tax and property tax. BART has sales tax and property tax. We have no sales tax and no property tax. So the reality is, right or wrong over time, how we fund our transit service is principally by tolls. And then before the pandemic, the second largest source of revenue was fares. And so that's how we pay for it. If we have money, we can continue it. And if we don't have money, we won't be able to continue it at the same levels. So I just want to make sure that the record is clear on that. We're at different transit agencies. And outside of San Francisco, sales tax revenues are up in Santa Clara County, Alameda County, Contra Costa County, Marin County, and Sonoma County. So the amount of money those transit operators are receiving as their primary source has gone up. Tolls are our primary source, and we have fewer people crossing the bridge. And so the reality is we have a different financial challenge than other transit operators. So that, unfortunately for all of you, presents some rather difficult decisions, and I want to acknowledge that. But I just thought I'd give that context, how we're funded differently than all the other transit operators in the Bay Area. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all very much. We'll move on then to item number 7, which is an approve award of contract 2023 D088, the Health and Welfare Consultant Services with USI Insurance Services. Kelly?
Why is the chair so high?
Wow. Good for you. Well played.
Good morning. I'm briefly coming to you this morning to seek your approval for award of our Health and Welfare Insurance Consultant Services for a 3-year term for $285,000 and 2 additional 1-year options to USI Insurance Company. Traditionally, just for a little bit of background, traditionally, we have always engaged in a broker/consultant to help us, and they've been pivotal in helping us negotiate, evaluate, work through amendments as it relates to our medical provision here for our actives and our retirees. As the district, as you all know, has transitioned over time here to the CalPERS medical system, the need for that additional evaluation and negotiations has been limited. It's still needed, but it's been limited to our other medical provider provisions, which is our dental, our vision, our EAP programs, as well as some of our voluntary programs. So we're looking at annual renewal services. That work has really diminished with the advent of bringing CalPERS on, and we're seeing that also in this effort for a request for proposals. We received 3 proposals, and based upon the selection committee's review and criteria, they believe that USI Insurance is the preferable option. Not only do they have a lot of experience in dealing with public agencies, which will be very analogous to some of the medical services that we would need, they also have just general experience and qualifications in this space. And then finally, and equally important, is that their cost proposal is very highly competitive. They did an all-inclusive fee. So that means they're going to help us not only with our Delta, our Vision, our EAP, but also all of those extra voluntary optional services that the district has really been becoming known for many of our employees to be able to have some of these optional coverings. And then finally, I just want to say that the current cost of this proposal is less than what the district was paying for the whole cost of the contract, is less than the district was paying just this year with our current broker. So we're actually very, very happy to bring this to you. I'm complete.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. I'll look to my colleagues. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
I'm very jealous. That's huge. Great presentation, always, Kelly, but that's phenomenal. Great work with that one. Yeah, huge.
Anyone from the public like to speak to us on this item?
We have no speakers on this item.
So I'll bring it back to the board, look for a motion to approve. So moved. Second. So we have a motion and a second, and we'll do a voice vote on this one. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously with all present. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kelly. Moving on to item 8, which is renew annual delegation of investment management authority to the auditor controller. Moving forward, and we have Joe Wire.
Thank you to the chair and the board. This is the annual delegation of investment management authority to your auditor controller, and then also the approval of the investment policy. First, I'll start with the investment policy. As you remember, the district has adopted the state of California's investment policy. It's our investment policy. They have not changed their investment policy, so we do not have to make changes. There are no recommended changes to investment policy this year. And then secondly, staff is requesting that you continue the delegation of authority to the general managers as required, to the auditor controllers required in state law. If any questions, happy to answer.
Anyone have any questions to this? Director Maskin.
A quick question. On page 80, in reference to the lake, it talks about the maximum amount allowed by the state treasurer. What is the maximum amount?
I'll have to look that up.
Not a big deal. I was just curious.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions, comments, concerns? Is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak us on this particular item?
We don't have any speakers in the room or online for this item.
So I'll bring back the body and ask if there's a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, again, on a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously with all present. Item number 9, receive the independent auditor's engagement letter for the annual financial audit and single audit for the year ending June 30th, 2024, as submitted by Eide Bailey LLP. Cody Smith is here. Cody.
Good morning. Morning. Is this on? Hello. Just first want to say thanks for having me. My first time back here with you guys. It's great to see everybody. So thank you again. My name is Cody Smith. I'm the Director of Accounting. It's fitting that we're doing this today, considering it's the official March Madness kickoff. Today is the official audit season kickoff. So I'm here to present Eide Bailey's engagement letter. Eide Bailey's in a second year of their contract with us. They do an external financial statement audit as well as a single audit. And they also help us with our state controllers reporting at year end. Work will begin in earnest next month. They'll finish up their audit, the external financial statement audit, come the fall, and then their single audit in the wintertime. So we'll obviously be back in the fall for the external financial statement audit, and then again in January, February for the single audit as well. I also just would be remiss to not bring up my teams, the accounting payroll teams. They do a phenomenal job day in, day out. They're a proud group. They're a committed group. I'm proud to be their leader. And so again, we're well positioned to pass the audits and anything else that's thrown at us with flying colors. So with that, any questions?
Any questions for Cody? Cody, I think this board, this body at least, because auditing is in our name, we're as excited about the audit season as we are about March Madness. Got to say thank you very much. Again, looking for my colleagues, any questions? Director Master.
When you said bring up your team, I thought you were going to talk about basketball.
Yes. Unfortunately, I am a St. Mary's alum, so they are in the league. So I think they play today. So we'll see, or the tournament, I should say. So we'll see how they do today. So go Gales.
And the Ducks play at 1. So. Seeing no questions, is there anyone in the public who'd like to speak to us on this item?
We have no speakers on this item.
So I'll bring it back. And again, this is to receive the independent auditor's engagement letter. And I'll look to my colleagues for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, that does pass unanimously. Thank you, Cody, for all the work. Appreciate it. Item 10, status report on the fiscal year 23-24 budget. Joe Wire.
Yes, thank you, Chair and Board. And Director Masson answered your question, $75 million. But during COVID, they gave an opportunity to invest another $75 million in so there's 2 buckets. So I'm not sure if that one still exists. I think it does today, but it'll probably be going away at some point.
75.
Yeah, 75 is what we've been using. And then the way that, just to add on one thing, the way that the district also has a camp fund, and it's not, send your kids to camp fund, but it's the initials that were set up by PFM actually runs it, your regular investment advisor. And what we find is we move the money back and forth between the two because the state has it kind of lags. So if the market's on its way up, you want to be in camp because they get the funds quicker. So we moved everything over to camp as the market went up. As the market's now starting to potentially, as you heard from Monique today, starting to drop down, we may see money going more over to LAIF because they are slower to turn over their investments. And so they hold on to those older ones that are getting higher rates longer. And that's been going on for years here, kind of watch how it goes. But those are the funds that we use for, day-to-day paying capital project bills, big bills that come in. I mean, it's just sort of a rotating fund that we use, and it gets much better rates than, say, leaving the money with Wells Fargo, which is our, banker. That's our real basic checking account that we make the paychecks out of. And so money goes in and out of there every day in Wells Fargo, and mostly it spends its time in either camp or LAIF, depending on whose rates are better. Yeah. Okay, going to 10, the status report of the budget. This is on the current budget. We're through February now, so but 2/3 of the year. If you just quickly turn to page 97, that just shows you how we're meeting the shortfall. In the middle column there are the numbers that meet the shortfall. The 15 million is what we're going to project to spend from ARP. That's the federal one-time funding. And then 8 million is extra, not extra, but it's greater than we projected toll and fare revenue. And then the 11 million down on item 4 is greater than projected other revenue, which is primarily what Monique was talking about, investment revenue. That's been greater than projected. And then bottom was the reduction in expense. And this is something that general manager talks about a lot. We are not running as much service as we could have run because we don't have passengers right now. We have to keep the costs down as low as we can. As you guys discussed, we need to keep the shortfall as small as possible. And so that's what balances out the 57 million we originally started with the shortfall. The rest of the report is just detail on the actual expenditures. Any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, thank you, Joe. I'll look to my colleagues. Any questions for Joe on the status of the budget? Director Maston.
Going back to the LAIF for a second, you said 75 million for LAIF. Does Camp EPA max as well?
Good question. Yes, I'm sure they do, potentially. But since it's a private sector thing, I'm not so sure. But we'll find out from PFM. And in fact, Alice may be sending me a message right now. I'm sure she knows.
Anyone else? I know we have someone who'd like to speak to us on this matter for the public.
Correct. We have David Pilpels online. Justine, can you go ahead and introduce David, please?
Hi, David. Can you go ahead?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so on item 10, it seems that about 1.5 million, which is the difference between line 1, second column, and the asterisk note of the 16.8 million minus the 15.2 million is about 1.5 million. That amount of ARP 3 funds will still carry over to the early part of next fiscal year 2024-25. A question was asked earlier about other funds flowing from the feds or the state through MTC. I think that is possible, unknown at this time. That the district is good and aggressive about seeking grant funds, both for capital and operating sources. Item 6 earlier stated that revenues would increase by about 9.4 million next year as a result of the proposed toll increase. That still leaves a pretty significant operating shortfall. So I don't think that the budget planning and the district is out of the woods. I think it's going to be a challenging operating budget, and I'm sure the staff are heavily engaged in that now. And finally, I look forward to the strategic plan presentation and discussion at the board meeting tomorrow to begin to address or continue to address more publicly the challenges and potential solutions to the significant fiscal situation for the district. Those are my thoughts. Thanks, as always, for listening.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. No one else online?
We have no other speakers.
Okay, I'll bring it back and safe. Thank you. This is just no action on these reports, but moving on to item number 11, which is the monthly review of the Golden Gate Bridge traffic tolls, bus and ferry transit patronage fares for the 8 months through February. Joe?
Thank you. If I could have everyone's attention just to turn to page 107, which is the table we use for the actual data on both our patronage and our revenues. And I thought this time, you've seen this table obviously every month, but I thought we'd just take a look at the actual revenues that are coming in, and that's the third column from the right. And so if you go over to the far right and come over 3 columns, that's the one with the cash. So the top box would be related to bridge, and the first number in that column is just under 14 million. That was the bridge revenue, toll revenue that came in July of this year. July, as we've talked, July is our summer is our peak when it comes to travel on the bridge. So we do tend to receive more revenue. And you can, if you just look down the column, you can see it was July, and now with February, which is usually the worst month because, first of all, there's fewer days. Every day is good. Well, there was 29 this year, so it's not quite as bad as it often is. But it's a day it's a month that we don't really care for, so we like to move on. But nonetheless, you can see how it's fallen through the other months into our, what we call our, seasonal less traffic. It's about a 20% drop when you look at it throughout the year. We have every expectation that, of course, we're turning the corner right now. March is going back up, and it'll go back up into the summer and be higher. Whether it's higher than where it was or not, we don't know, and that's the whole game. Now, if you just go down to just follow that column down to the next next box, that's bus, and it was a little over 700,000 back in July, and you can see it sort of gradually bounces around, but it gradually comes down, and now it's 560. It's also fallen about 20%. Again, there's fewer days. It's less traffic in the winter. We have less other recreational travel, so that drops. So, but it's the same thing's going to happen. It's going to turn around and start going back up. Ferry has the most dramatic change. It is the most seasonal, and if you look at Ferry, which is the next box down, we were almost 1.6 million in July, and now here we are in February at just under 700,000, which is less than half of where it was. And that's what you see when we've always seen this. This is nothing new. It's just important it's probably going to be, in fact, Mike and I were actually talking about this recently. It's probably going to be a greater issue than it's been in the past, because with our Angel Island service, in a sense, we are, and our drop in commute service, because the fewer people, more remote work, we're seeing that the non-commute travel is more important to our ferry system than it ever has been. And it's something that, we as an institution are looking at, have been looking at, and probably in the future, and future boards will probably be focusing more on, unless, of course, commute travel turns around, which it may or may not do. We'll have to see. We have every expectation that this too will turn around when we move into the coming months into the baseball season comes in, and then Angel Island picks up and people start recreation travel out of Sausalito. We'll see these numbers go right back up, and hopefully they'll go up, as Dennis has been saying, even higher than they were last year, by at least a little bit.
Since we're on that page, if you look on the left side for bridge, you see February, and you slide over a couple columns, you see 3%. So February of 2024, bridge traffic southbound was 3% above the prior year's February. Because month-to-month comparisons are very important, because, as Joe just mentioned, seasonality is huge. Our bus ridership in February was 11% above the prior year's February, and our ferry ridership was 19% above. So while we're still way, way down from the pre-pandemic levels, we are seeing growth when we look at 1 month in the same month a year earlier, and this is the chart we can kind of track that as it moves along.
And that's not just because there's COVID.
No, it's not just because if you look at January bridge traffic was up compared to the prior January, as was bus and ferry. So we are seeing those trends, but great point on that leap year.
Yeah, and if you look at the bottom, if you stay in the column that Dennis was pointing to in the right-hand box, the left-hand box, if you look at the bottom, the one in bold, the 3.5% is the actual year-over-year growth. So you can just check that one number, and you can see that 3.5 is large. Prior to COVID, if we saw more than 1% growth in a year, we were happy. The bridge traffic has usually been very steady and stable. So we're still getting, I would say that given the size of that increase, although 3.5 may not seem large, but it is, given the size of that increase, we're still getting some bounce back, so to speak. Some people coming back and some behavioral change, not just sort of organic growth, because it's a pretty large number. And with bus and ferry at 10.5% and 25%, clearly we were seeing bounce back there. There's no organic growth in our relatively slow growing county of Marin or even in Sonoma at that rate. That's a huge growth rate. So hopefully we'll get a little more of that. Although this is probably a case where things do sort of outliers return to the mean as you get farther away from the event. So there's likely that next year's bounce back might be a little less than this year's bounce back. And probably each year going out is to be like that. And then the further charts or graphs in this report have that 5-year data. So you can see how this, as Dennis also mentioned, that, we're going up, but we're still lower than we used to be. That's shown in those other graphs. Any questions on any of this? Happy to respond.
Great. Why don't you just roll through
okay.
Item number 12 as well?
Sure. Let's turn to page 113 then for item 12. And this is your operating and revenue and finances. So essentially the resources that the district uses to continue its operations year in and year out. And what we, of course, attached are the line item pieces, which we don't usually go over in this, but we'll look at the cover page, and happy to talk about the line items at any time if you have questions. Looking at the far right of the table on the page, so the far right column, that talks about the revenues and expenses year to date through the first 8 months of this year. The revenues are up substantially over a year ago, and that's the column to the left, the left column. Those are the ones from last year. And expenses are also up, but not quite as much. So therefore, the bottom line number, the $5 million, shows that we're still producing more revenue than we are expenses, and that is very positive. And doing so through these lean months is important. We're expecting that to get better. We do have the year-end numbers, which will change it a little bit. So, in other words, negatively, usually there's more expenditures in the year-end months as you catch up with expenditures you didn't capture during the year. So we're still projecting, and you'll see that when you see the budget later this year. They're still projecting the year will end with a shortfall, but not with one anywhere near the size of what we were talking about earlier, as we showed in the earlier status report.
Great, thank you, Joe.
And do you want me to do capital too, since we're here?
Please do.
Yes, that is 123. If you want to turn to page 123. Again, as mentioned earlier, we are 2/3 of the way through the year, so you would, if in some ways, expect capital expenditures to be somewhere in the 60% range, and they are in the 60% range. So it really isn't a big story here. This is capital projects, as we always say, spend out at their own pace. But the fact that overall we're in this place means things are going well. There's some more detail in the other charts, but I think that's all I have as a summary, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for all the work. Looking to my colleagues, any questions on any of the reports that Joe has just reviewed? Seeing none, was there anyone from the public who'd like to speak to us on this particular item?
We have no speakers on the public line or in the room on this item.
Joe, thanks for all the work. Appreciate it, to you and your staff. Looking to Madam Secretary, anyone like to speak to this body before we adjourn on public comment?
We have no additional speakers.
And with that, we're at the end of our agenda. If I could get a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Hearing no opposition, we're adjourned.